BLG is patiently waiting, so let's get to it.
All right, let's welcome Brandon Lee Gowton back to talk about the first place. Yes, first place after 1 week, Philadelphia Eagles. Brandon, welcome back. We're really not going to boot you for the Emmys.
All right, that sounds good. Thanks for having me, as always.
We can boot Chet to talk Eagles.
Yeah. Hey, Brandon. The first place Philadelphia Eagles. I love it. I know it's only 1 week, but what the hell? Let's be honest. Game one of the Nick Sirianni era went pretty much about as well as could be expected, did it not?
Really encouraging signs. I think this team had a really good training camp, and there was some optimism building heading into the season, even though, there's a lot of reasons to be skeptical about what this team would look like after such a bad season last year. And they went out and they played with energy in week one. I thought the coaching was great in terms of both the play calling and the aggressiveness. I like seeing that. Obviously, the quarterback played well. There's a lot of good signs from week one. You can't really poke too many holes from that victory about concerns moving forward.
Yeah, Brandon, I tell you, the biggest thing that might take away from this game, couple. One is they took care of business, beating the team that they were better than, and left no doubt doing that. That's obviously a great sign. The other thing I thought, Nick Sirianni, did a great job with his game plan. It was a very low-risk game plan. He didn't put Jalen Hurts in many stressful situations. Fortunately, neither did the Falcons. But everything was short and an easy game plan for the guys to work, and they did a great job at it.
Yeah, I believe Jalen Hurts had the lowest average intended air yards in week one, so he wasn't airing it out, and that's okay. I mean, obviously it worked for them. I think the Eagles actually led the league in yards after the catch from week one. Jalen Hurts, I thought, did exactly what was asked of him. I don't think you can necessarily have him do that every single week. You're going to have to air it out at some point, obviously, but against the Falcons, it was able to work. I'm sure they will get a little bit more aggressive, and they're going to have to down the road, but against a really bad Falcons defense, they kind of just saw a matchup they liked. They took advantage of it. And look, it's Jalen Hurts' first start as a week one starter. They're easing him in. I think it's kind of a good approach. The Sirianni coached to his strengths. Can't really complain about too much.
Yeah, Hurts I thought was terrific, and there's a lot of excitement about the young Eagles wide receivers. Dante Smith, Jalen Reagor in his second year. Maybe he's a new guy this year, and of course Quez Watkins, who had a great training camp and preseason. What do you think of those guys?
Yeah, I thought we saw some good signs from all of them. Obviously, it was kind of funny to me that they started the game off with 3 straight targets to Quez Watkins, and he didn't get involved again, but he was successful early on. Dante Smith is so good. I just think he's head and shoulders above. I mean, he's a wide receiver one on this team, both in terms of targets in week one and receptions and yards and all of that. The touchdown pass, or the touchdown reception rather, was a really good scheme play, but still executed it well. No drops. Such a smooth route runner, knows how to get open, can get open reliably. I think we're going to see even bigger and brighter things from him. And Reagor didn't wow me by any means, but he caught that pass on the screen and he took it to the end zone. He showed off his speed on that play. So, another positive sign from him. Overall, I don't think anyone's going to be mistaking this wide receivers course for, the best in the league, but they have some young guys here who have talent and potential, and I think they can maybe improve as the season goes along.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the other thing I was real happy about, Brandon, is that at halftime, still a close game, the Eagles had run the ball just 10 times, and 4 of them were by Hurts, and I was a little concerned about that going into the half. But the offensive line took control of the game, and they ended up with 32 rushes, 8 by Hurts, 15 by Sanders, 9 by Gainwell, who had a nice game too in his first outing. How many years have we been saying, grind it out, run the football, and they were in a situation, they took what they were given, and the offensive line blew them off the football.
Yeah, and Miles Sanders looks really good in terms of having a lot of juice. He had some big runs. Kenny Gainwell, I think, looks pretty solid, especially for a day 3 rookie who didn't even play football last year because he opted out last season of college football. So encouraging signs in that regard. Like you said, Bill, the offensive line I thought did some really great things in the run game. So you figure that's going to be continue to be a big part of the offense moving forward. And then Hurts' mobility is huge. In that 2-minute drill, how many times was he able to kind of sidestep pressure, take off, get some easy yards, get out of bounds to stop the clock, move the chains? That is a really big factor. And it's good to see the Eagles are leaning into that. They're not trying to force Jalen Hurts into just being a pocket passer. They took advantage of his mobility, and Hurts, to his credit, took advantage of the right times to run. He didn't force the issue. I thought in general he did a really good job of protecting himself too. He wasn't taking off and getting hit, taking these big hits for the most part. So that was really good to see.
All right, now let's face it, the Falcons' offensive line isn't great, but the Eagles' D-line did look pretty good. They got lots of pressure. Hargrave looks like a new guy this year. If those guys can stay healthy, I think that's going to be, a real benefit to that Eagles defense.
Yeah, and Jayvon Hargrave had a really good training camp too. So when I saw this in Week 1, it wasn't where did this guy come from? I mean, he was amazing in training camp. He was arguably the best camp of any player. He was living in the backfield, and I think he kind of had a better game than you really realized at first until the end, because it's kind of at the end is when he had those 2 sacks to force turnovers on downs, and the game was kind of already in hand, or at least they were kind of closing it out at that point. But I didn't think the stats were there early on, but he was really disruptive still. I think he had a big hit, I believe, on Matt Ryan at one point, and they completed it anyway, and they converted a 3rd down, I believe the Falcons did. But still, getting in his face and getting pressure and kind of being there all game long clearly wore down on the Falcons, and eventually they didn't have the answers for it, especially when the Falcons were in these obvious passing situations. They couldn't run the ball anymore. So, yeah, I think Hargrave is going to continue to have a really big season. His career high in sacks is 6.5. I mean, he's already at 2. I think he's going to blow by that, especially with the 17th game. I think he's definitely a big reason to feel good about this team and this defensive line.
Yeah, and speaking of the rest of the defense, I think they did a real nice job, one, getting their feet underneath them. I think they came flying out, and everybody was flying around. They were over pursuing. They weren't protecting their gaps, and the Falcons gashed them the first 2 times down the field. Let's say, I don't know the exact number, but call them 2 80-yard drives to get those field goals. That's 160 yards. They ended up, the Falcons only getting 260 for the game. So only 100 yards after they settled in the middle of the first quarter. I thought a great job by the defensive coaches to get them back together, and by the defensive players settling down, getting their feet under.
It was a really impressive defensive performance, all told. I mean, they didn't allow a touchdown. It didn't allow a play over 20 yards, which I believe, according to Shil Kapadia, they were the only team in the NFL not to do that. I mean, that's pretty good stuff. And mind you, this is Jonathan Gannon's first game in the NFL as a defensive coordinator. So that's a pretty good start for him. And I think, it's a good mix of talent and the scheme here that they have going. Obviously, they had to clean up some of the tackling issues that they had. Eric Wilson was a big culprit. He had 4 missed tackles in that game, especially early on. That's something, maybe it's because they did go later in training camp and they didn't, play in the preseason games that kind of they'll adjust to, or something they can kind of work on. We'll see. Or maybe there's bad tacklers and that you're going to have to live with that to a little bit of an extent. But yeah, a lot of encouraging signs on defense, even though, all the offense and Jalen Hurts and Dante Smith are getting the hype.
And one of the only other criticisms was the fact there were a lot of penalties on the offense, some false starts, that sort of thing. We can say maybe that was because the guys didn't play that much in the preseason. I mean, Lane Johnson had a few penalties. He's going to be fine. Were you concerned about that at all?
I mean, there were a lot for the Falcons, too. I think there was 25 or 24 in the game as a whole. And also, if I'm not mistaken, the Falcons also didn't play their starters. So maybe it is some of that. It's just some kind of rust you're knocking off. Maybe it's the refs kind of being a little bit more aggressive in Week 1, kind of, trying to set the standard for the season or whatever, or just trying to be too involved for our pleasure, probably. But yeah, I think that's something, those are things, especially, the pre-snap stuff. I mean, you just got to clean that up. That's stuff that has to be ironed out in practice and everything.
Mm-hmm.
How about the Jalen Hurts jersey sales? And they went absolutely crazy on Monday, and I guess that's nationwide. They weren't buying them all in Philly. So Hurts certainly made a good showing in his first 2021 game.
Yeah, I mean, a really encouraging performance from the Eagles' second-year quarterback. Again, that low intended air yards thing is something to watch. He's going to have to be more aggressive. Defenses are probably going to challenge him, maybe try to take away some of that short stuff. And he has really good touch on the deep ball, so I'm not really worried about that as much as I am kind of some of the intermediate passing game and the timing and everything and getting the ball out at the proper time. So, a lot of tests here to come for him, but a great start. And even though, he was maybe kind of taking some shorter throws and taking what the defense gave him, and the Eagles were really playing to his strengths. I mean, he made some good plays too. That touchdown throw to Dallas Goedert was not anything schemed up. That was him scrambling out and making a really good play, being on the same page with his target, making a really good throw. So there were some plays in there, that weren't just about like the coaching staff, boosting him up. It was about him making plays. And again, the mobility I brought up is a huge factor for him. So it's really encouraging, and I can see why people are buying that number 1 jersey. It's a good look too. I like the number 1 a lot more.
Let me follow up on that real quick too, because one thing I was really surprised from the Falcons standpoint, Lane Johnson kept caving in that right side, allowing Hurts to roll right time and time again. If you're going to make him roll left, right? I mean, you make him go to his weak side. He's rolling to his right, and it was just, shoot fish in a barrel. It was easy for him.
It's too easy. Again, like you saw him do it and be able to throw the ball. You saw him do it, be able to, again, that 2-minute kind of situation, just get it out of bounds, stop the clock, get some free yards. It's a really nice part of the offense to have when like everything. And Nick Sirianni talked about that too. He said he credited Jalen Hurts, and he said, we had some things break down, and then him just being able to run like that kind of got us into good looks and kind of bailed us out.
I think it was last February when we first met Nick Sirianni. We were all kind of worried, like, this guy's a little goofy, may not have been the best of choices. But, boy, he has grown on the Philly fan base over the last couple of weeks and months for sure. And what was really impressive to me, I thought, was how prepared they looked for, a week 1 game. Other than the penalties here and there, I mean, he looked like he knew what he was doing with play calling. Everybody was ready in their right spots. What's your impression now of Sirianni?
Yeah, I mean, we even saw that a little bit. I know they didn't play much in the preseason, but the first preseason game the starters did play, the offense looked smooth. It didn't look like there was a lot of clunkiness to that. So, and then you saw that again in week 1 here. It seems like the team was indeed well prepared. I thought Sirianni has done a good job as a motivator, just because even like the game itself, you're seeing the post-game locker room reaction. And then going back to those joint training camp practices where the starters did play, against the other starters from the Patriots and the Jets, the Eagles always just looked like the more energized team. And that's something you get often, obviously, out of Nick Sirianni. It's his energy. That's something he brings to the table, and I think that's kind of rubbing off. And that's like they're creating an environment where there is a lot of passion and energy, and that's obviously a very relatable thing to Philadelphia sports fans. So yeah, you can't help but like to see that. And I think it's good. And I think Sirianni today talked about how he wants to see Dante Smith dancing in the post-game locker room, because you worked hard to get this win. You should be able to celebrate it. And then you should have that hunger to go out next week to go get that and be able to do that again. So I think he has a good approach. And again, I just love the aggressiveness too. I mean, the Eagles are down, or they go down and they get the touchdown, and there's the penalty, and they could have just taken the extra point that they made, but instead they go for 2. And now they're up 2 possessions going into halftime, and then they get the ball back. That was a huge moment. So I know they didn't convert on those 4th downs, but I still like being aggressive there. I think that's going to work out in the long run. And I think that, the no fear mentality is a good thing to have. So really good debut by a guy who had literally never called plays as a main play caller in a game before.
Yep. What comment on defense? They stopped the run well. What'd you think about linebackers? There were linebackers in the game. Wilson, two tackles, 7 assists. Singleton, 2 tackles, 5 assists officially. Linebackers making plays, for goodness sake.
Yeah, it was interesting because the Eagles really rotated a lot of guys in there. I mean, Patrick Johnson's in there at one point. Jannard Avery is playing way too much for my liking. I think he has to. They kind of got to cut that down. I don't think he was really doing much of anything, especially in a positive way out there. Eric Wilson, I think, saw the field a little bit less than he did early on, just because he was struggling in run defense. So they have a lot of bodies at that position. I think they kept 7 on the roster. Davion Taylor was hurt last week, so he didn't play. So they had 6 up. But it seems like they're kind of trying to work through that. I mean, obviously, I think Wilson and Singleton in general are going to be the top guys. But it seems like they're kind of rotating through there and trying to figure things out. I think at the very least, you can say there isn't any kind of disaster player like there was with Nate Gary last year. I think that's, a big upgrade to have some kind of level of competency there helps a lot. But yeah, that's what you're looking at right now.
Hey, speaking of the defense, what did you think, Brandon, of the little celebration that the D-line guys were doing?
I like it. Again, hey, look, when were the Eagles at their best? In 2017. They're having a lot of fun. They were celebrating. They were cutting it loose. I think that's important for a team to have this kind of energy, this swagger. And again, like, this isn't like the first drive of the game. This was later in the game when this happens. Like, they earned the right to celebrate. They played really well. They were kicking the Falcons' butts. They were dominating them, especially the defensive line matchup going against, just quite frankly, an overmatched Falcons offensive line, where they had, a rookie third-round pick starting at left guard there, Jalen Mayfield. So, yeah, it's great.
Hey, on the injury front, is Epps out, and are there any other major injuries that came out of that game?
Yeah, so Marcus Epps was not officially practicing today, listed as did not participate on the injury report, but he was at practice on a side field. He was doing some stuff. That's typically, I think, a good sign, because if you're in the concussion protocol, there's a stage where you're not even allowed to go outside and be there at practice. So it seems like he's kind of advanced in it. It seems like he might have a chance to be back this week. I don't know if Rodney McLeod will play still, because he was limited all of last week. He was limited today. We'll see how it goes on Thursday and Friday and what his status is, but I'm guessing he still might be out. And if that's the case, Epps might start again this week.
Well, Brandon, one guy who had a great game plays a position that we rarely speak about, and that's Aaron Cepas. He's the new punter, the Australian punter. He was good.
He was. And honestly, when you looked at his background in terms of, apparently, so some of the things I had read about when the Eagles signed him is that he was neck and neck in a punting competition last year with Jack Fox from the Lions. And for people who don't know, Jack Fox is arguably the best punter in the NFL, or at least he's up there. It's one of the few bright spots that the Lions have going for them. So, and the Lions liked him enough to keep him on their practice squad all last year, even though they had a really good punter. So that kind of shows you, oh, this guy might have some talent. And sure enough, the Eagles signed him. And at the time, it's interesting because Cameron Johnston was still on the roster. I think a lot of people thought they were just going to re-sign him and just retain him as their punter, but they didn't. Texans signed him to a big deal, and all of a sudden, Cepas comes in here. He's unproven. I think he had a good training camp, good preseason, and now he's doing it in the regular season games.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Jordan, one more thing before we move on to next week. Jordan Mulatto, he just signed a big deal. He's going to be around a while, and a lot of great things being said about him, and as a potential Pro Bowl player, and just all kinds of accolades. You get to see him more than any of the rest of us. What do you think about Jordan Mulatto, and is he all that?
I think Jordan Mailata, there was a perception, or it could have been perceived that, well, he just won the left tackle job just because Andre Dillard was so bad in training camp, and Andre Dillard was really bad. But it wasn't just about that. It was also that Jordan Mailata was legitimately looking really good and the best he's ever been. So I think he's taken another step forward. I think, having that starting experience from last year, he took that, he built upon that, and now he's going out and proving himself. And it's a really good point raised by you, Bill, because it's okay, now we know he won the left tackle job. Now we know he's a starter, and that's all good. But just how good can he be? Can he be a Pro Bowl player? Maybe. I think that the ceiling is there for that, but that's the question mark now. Just how good of a left tackle can he be? I think there's reasons to feel encouraged about it. He's still young. I think he's still getting better. He's still getting experience because he didn't play football for forever. So I think the arrow is very much pointing up on him.
So, Brandon, week 2, the 49ers at the Link. It's the Birds season or home season opener. If they win this week, should we just go out and start looking for Super Bowl tickets?
Well, I mean, they go 2-0. That's a good sign in NFL history. And then, they get Dallas next week, who they just lost DeMarcus Lawrence. So not a good sign for them. They're going to be out with some other players. So, but keeping it 1 week at a time, this is a big opportunity, against the 49ers team that is obviously, good on paper, and they're healthier than they were last year. Their quarterback situation is a little bit better than it was last year, certainly when the Eagles were facing them, when the Eagles were going up against Nick Mullins. But look, the 49ers let the Lions back into the game. I think the 49ers aren't really feeling all that amazing that they as they wanted to after kind of dominating Detroit for most of that game. And I think it's an interesting opportunity here for the Eagles. I mean, the Link is going to be just, I can't even imagine. This is their first game with a full crowd of fans since January 2020. I think the Link is going to be nuts. And I think this is a really hostile environment that the 49ers are entering. Yep.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting 3-week block here, I think. The coaches like to break these things into 4-game blocks. First one was good. 49ers, Cowboys, and Chiefs. That's a tough first block for Sirianni and the guys. It'll be interesting to see how they come out of this thing. If they come out 3-1, I think you got to be really, really, really happy.
Yeah, I mean, it's and honestly, their schedule, a lot of the meat of their schedule, at least in terms of the NFC East, isn't until later in the year. So if you can kind of even just tread water, like kind of lower the bar there even a little bit, I mean, you have a chance to make a run late in the season. So, I mean, if you're banking wins now and you're doing good, then hey, even better. Then you're getting into late into the year, then it's even more favorable at that point. So yeah, it's a good test early on to kind of see what this team really is.
Last question, Brandon. Sixers issue, I think you know what it is. When the season opens October 20th, will Ben Simmons still be on the roster? Please say no.
I mean, I want to say no. I can't. I've said this before. I'll say it again. I cannot watch the Sixers. I am boycotting the Sixers if Ben Simmons is on the team. I can't do it. I can't watch the Sixers if Ben Simmons is on this. What's the point? We all know how it's going to end. I can't do it. A report comes out today from Tom Moore that he's going to be on the team or whatever. The Sixers are preparing for that. It's a nightmare kind of situation for me. I honestly, I read that report and I feel ready to check out because I can't do it. I can't watch them play for the Sixers. I can't do it.
I hear you.
One final thing for me, Brandon, the Buffalo Bills announced today that they are going to be the fourth NFL team, I guess, that is going to require vaccinations to get into the stadium. Do you see that coming to Philly?
I wonder. Yeah, I haven't heard anything about it. I would think, the Eagles typically tend to be, I mean, you look at how they handled the fan situation last year. There were a lot of teams who, especially the Cowboys, just for example, who pretty much had fans the whole year, where the Eagles, it took them a little bit. And then part of that was obviously part of the city of Philadelphia having to give clearance and everything. But then it was also taken away a little bit later in the year. And even when the Eagles did have fans in there was a pretty conservative amount. It wasn't like they were really pushing that limit. So when I look at that, maybe that could be possible, but I don't know.
Okay. All right. Hey, before we let you go, all your social media things, throw them out there so everybody that's following can follow you because you always have a ton of stuff going on. You're great to follow.
Well, thank you. At Brandon Gowton on Twitter, Instagram, bleedingyournation.com for obviously all the written content. There's the Bleeding Your Nation podcast feed where I'm doing like a billion podcasts a day. And then there's also the SB Nation NFL show where we talk about, not only the Eagles sometimes, but obviously the NFL, all 32 teams at large. And that's obviously really kicking into gear with the season back. So a lot of good stuff. And also the Bleeding Your Nation YouTube channel too. We're doing post-game reaction shows there right after the Eagles either win or lose, obviously, hopefully win over the 49ers. So that'll be there as well.
Busy guy.
All right. Thanks, Brandon. Appreciate you taking the time. Let's do it again. Always
Sounds
great.
good.